trip here for Milton Dohoney, and we're very pleased to have him.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I've been here about 7 months now, and every day is a little better in terms of my ability to learn the city and my ability to extend myself and become familiar with the community, go out into forums like this to be able to address you. I'm going to talk to you about some broad areas. I'll give you some specifics, and then I'll be glad to try to entertain any question that you have. If you have a question that I don't know the answer to, which is quite possible, I'd be glad to get your name afterwards and get an answer to you. I like to always follow up with people that write me or call me, as the case may be. I am basically trying to focus the energy at City Hall and the things that we are doing for this calendar year into 4 areas: service excellence, public safety, economic development, and neighborhood investment. And so I'm going to talk to you about those 4 areas and what we're trying to do and why those areas are important. And then I'll throw the floor open. First, in the area of service excellence. I inherited a workforce at city government, some 6,000 people. My opinion is that to a large degree, their spirit was in some cases broken, in other cases deeply damaged. I inherited a workforce who was fearful of taking risk, fearful of getting beyond their comfort zone, fearful of engaging because they've been, in their mind, their perception, beaten down for doing that in the past. Fearful of making a mistake because if we make a mistake, we'll get castigated in the press. And so it's easier to accept the status quo. It's easier to take the safe route. So I am trying to push a cultural change within the workforce in city government. I need to stabilize the leadership there. I have a number of people in key jobs that are acting. And if you know that you're only acting in a capacity, that means the job is not permanently yours. You are not going to extend yourself to the fullest extent, because if you're interested in the job, you don't really want to risk that. And if you know or think you're not going to get the job, you tend to play it safe. So I need to stabilize our leadership team, and I'm trying to do that. I recently hired an economic development director. I will soon hire a director of public services, a budgeting director, a finance director. Those are the key areas that run any organization. So when you've got acting people, it puts you at a disadvantage. And so we are trying to address those areas. I have told all of our workforce, and I am telling the public, that we need to be about pursuing excellence, not mediocrity. And we need to pursue excellence across the board. We don't need to be fearful of making a mistake. We need to take risks. All great cities achieve that status because they are risk takers. And so for Cincinnati to approach its potential, we need to be willing to do that. In the area of public safety, last year we had a homicide rate that was clearly unacceptable. We had some pluses in some other areas of the crime picture, but the homicide rate got the most attention. And that's one of the areas that people want to see improved. The overall crime picture also needs to be improved. And one of the things that I have said publicly many times in the media and out in the community, that if we have a strategy for sustained crime reduction that is focused solely on hiring 100 cops, 1,000 cops, 1,000,000 cops, we will be sorely disappointed. Because simply hiring more police officers is not a strategy for sustained crime reduction. We need to be able to do more than that. We have to also have a strategy that includes creating opportunities within the community for people to be viably employed, to be able to take care of themselves. We need a strategy that deals with reentry, because there are a number of people that have gone in and out of the judicial system, and some of them have treatment needs that need to be addressed. They have housing needs that need to be addressed, and that's got to be part of the overall strategy. The jail is an issue that is not clearly driven by the city, it's driven by the county, but it is a community issue, and the city and the county need to collaborate together to be able to resolve that. We have been working with the county, the commissioners, and the council have been collaborating on that, and that's something that we need to do. As you know, we are still dealing with the collaborative. We are in the 5th year of that process. In fact, I spent all morning in federal court with 2 federal judges and all of the parties. And one of the questions is, it's scheduled to run out or be completed this August. And so one of the questions is, should it be ended or not? Have we come far enough for it to end and then deal with monitoring, after that? We're not at the point where the court has determined whether it will end, and we still have some work to do. We have work to do in the area of police-community relations. We have work to do in some of the nuts and bolts things that are part of the collaborative that have not been fully addressed. And so we've got to stay at it and try to finish that in the appropriate manner. Youth in our community is an area that I have talked about a number of times. If you look at crime across the United States, a lot of the more violent criminal acts are being performed, if you will, by teenagers. That's true in Cincinnati, but that's true in any other major city that you look at. When I got here, I went out and visited with the head of United Way. I visited with the president of the YMCA. I have engaged the foundation community, the Greater Cincinnati Foundation, and other funding entities that provide money for nonprofits. Because when I looked at our fiscal business, our books, which were in bad shape, it was clear that the city does not have the capacity by itself to fully deal with the youth crime violence issue. And even if we had unlimited money, which we don't, it should not be something that just the city deals with anyway. It is a community challenge. And so when I went to these other institutions, I asked the United Way, for example, to the extent that you can, provide more money to organizations that are intervening with preteens and teens. I asked the YMCA to do the same thing. If you take young people, and if my left hand represents age 1, and my right hand represents age 21, as a community, we need to be able to, 1, answer this question. How many service providers do we have that deal with the population from age 1 through 12? How many service providers deal with ages 13 through 17? And how many service providers deal with ages 18 to 21? And then next, we need to know, to what extent are the service providers helping to instill developmental assets within a young person? It's not simply about having activities to occupy their time. That's the theory that we have had for a long time. If we keep them busy for enough hours of the day, engaged in positive behavior, it will keep them out of harm's way, and it will keep them from doing harm. In 2007, that simply does not go far enough, because we are dealing with a significant part of the population that, for whatever reason, does not have the skill set to reason with each other, does not have the skill set to know how to deal with conflict. For too many of our young people, their reaction in a conflict situation is violence. That has to change. And it takes more than just city government in order for that change to be made. In the area of economic development, within city government, our posture has been, we will deal with opportunities that come through the door, meaning people that approach us with some deal that they want to do in the city. The reason we've had that posture is with all the budget cuts that we've endured over the last several years, the departments are short-staffed, so they haven't had the ability to go and seek deals out. What we're trying to do now, with the support of the mayor and the council, for the first time, we will finally fill all of the vacancies in the economic development area. We just brought in a new director from the greater Phoenix area. It was announced in the media last week, Holly Childs. And so not only will we entertain deals that come through the door, but we need to go out and find deals. We need to go out and work on retention, retaining the jobs that we currently have. One of the things I ask for is for the private sector to identify a person that could work with us for $1 a year. Duke Energy stepped forward, and David Smith, who is a professional at Duke Energy, is now working for the city for $1. And he is bringing additional capacity that we needed and is helping us develop a strategy for retaining the jobs that we have in Cincinnati, Ohio. In addition to that, we need to be a lot more aggressive about creating jobs, about bringing jobs to Cincinnati. I visited recently with the regional chamber and asked them, when this community goes on a foreign trade mission, what role does city government play? And my response was, you don't really play any role because you're not there. The chamber goes to Japan once a year. They go to Munich, Germany once a year. They go to China every 2 years to try to encourage foreign investment to come to Cincinnati and the greater Cincinnati region. It's a bit odd if the core of the region is not present. So I've informed Ellen Vanderhorst that the city intends to be a fully engaged participant. We will go and try to encourage companies in Japan, Germany, and anywhere else to locate in Cincinnati, because that's how we will expand the tax base. And as we expand the tax base, we then have more money to provide services to the public. We are only going to do that through growth and development. We will never get there through cutting. Cutting is something that I did because I had to do it. If you look at our fiscal situation in August of '06, when I came, and you see that over the past 5 or 6 years, we're dipping into our surplus just to make the books balance. It's not rocket science for you to figure out. If we keep doing that, we're going to be bankrupt. And so in order to change that, we need to figure out what are the most important things for us as a city and get about the business of doing that. In addition to the foreign investment, the trying to retain jobs, the trying to create jobs, one of the great misnomers that people have about the city is that we own all this property that we could use for economic development. So I did a portfolio review, And I can tell you that city government today only owns 11 parcels of land that are 5 acres or bigger. Only 11 parcels that are 5 acres or bigger. So if we're going to go recruit somebody, that means we're going to have to find land that today somebody else owns, because we don't have enough parcels for a full-scale economic development effort in terms of land use. Fortunately, the City Council and Mayor supported a $3 million capital fund for economic development purposes, and that will help, but it's not enough. So we're going to work with what we have, but what I'm trying to give you is the bigger picture, where we're trying to go and what it's going to take to get there, and how it ties into the big picture. The more that we're able to create jobs and get local companies to expand, we create more opportunities for our own people. And at least some of those people, if they had an opportunity, would choose work over criminal activity. We're not going to save everybody, but we need to do more on the opportunity side as well. And then in the area of neighborhood investment, our philosophy has been, we have 52 neighborhoods. If we have $52, we give everybody $1 so we can say we treated everybody the same. My philosophy is that's ridiculous. Because if everybody just gets $1, we're only going to see incremental advancement, and so we're all going to be going at a snail's pace for a very long time. Our neighborhood investment needs to be strategic. It needs to be focused. It needs to be leveraged. And so that might mean that for a year or two, we have to say to 5 or 6 neighborhoods, this year you don't get your $1. We're not forgetting you. We're not dismissing you. But we're going to pool all $6 so we can make a more dramatic impact right here. And when we do that, there will be spin-off effects for the surrounding neighborhoods, and then we will move again in a strategic fashion. So you can actually see something come from the good of the money that you provide for us to use. We have today 1,800 vacant buildings. The city does not have the capacity to deal with all 1,800 of them at one time, even if we wanted to. One of the perceptions in the community is that the city is a huge offender in terms of not being able to keep up with its own property. For sure. I will admit that we have a challenge in that area, but here are the numbers. Out of the 1,800 vacant buildings, the city owns 40. 40. That means that somebody else owns 1,760 of them. And many of the owners of these buildings are all over the United States. They're part of company structures. When we can find an individual, we pursue them, but a lot of times you're going through a lot of legal mazes to find out who actually owns this property. We asked for $1 million in the budget process for demolition because of the 1,800 structures. In round numbers, about 400 of them are condemned. And so, with the city being as spread out as it is, we could, for example, again, say we're going to give everybody $1. So we can take down a building here and a building there and a building way up on the hill. And then at the end of the year, if you ask, well, did you see the demolition of the city? No, I can't see where they did anything. Because you can't tell the difference. So because of that, we picked 3 neighborhoods. Price Hill, Avondale, Northside. There are 91 condemned structures just in those 3 neighborhoods. And our commitment is we want to take all 91 of them down. so that when you do that within a neighborhood, you can see the difference. And when you create that land clearance, you at least have a fighting opportunity to create new home construction in the city neighborhoods. Our city is an older city. It is a built-out city. We have limited capacity for new construction in the city limits. If we want to be the city that we proclaim, we have to have a full-range housing mix. It can't all be about condos on the river. It's condos, it's apartments, it's single-family homes, it's dealing with rental property that needs to be fixed up. We did not have, when I arrived, a housing policy. We did not have an economic development policy. We did not have a policy that deals with tax increment financing, or TIFs, as we say. We did not have a communication strategy. If we're going to be a big city, you got to have those things. We have now developed a TIF policy that we have sent on to the mayor and the city council. We have developed a housing policy that we have sent on to the mayor and the city council. And when we did the housing policy, we didn't just do it with just us in City Hall. We invited a number of organizations out in the community that are housing advocates to come in and review it, to come in and inform us on where they think some changes ought to be made. I'm not telling you it's a perfect document, but when you're trying to do things in the absence of any kind of stated direction, you're kind of all over the place. Our number one priority within our housing policy is sustainable home ownership. The key word is sustainable. There's really not a big problem with people achieving ownership, but it's not sustainable. And the fact that it's not sustainable is evidenced by Cincinnati averaging about 100 foreclosures a week. This state leads the country in foreclosures. When the mayor and I was in Washington last week, talking with Sherrod Brown, talking with Representative Gene Schmidt, talking with Steve Shabbat, talking with Jeff Davis from Northern Kentucky, we talked about the wish list that we have for federal dollars, but we also talked about the need for foreclosures to be raised up on the federal radar screen. It's not always the prime lender, it's the subprime. It's the loan to the folks that have marginal income to begin with. And when you tell them in your national marketing effort, you can get an interest-only loan. You can get a 10-1 ARM, which means after that 10th year, that payment is going to explode. And so what is happening, people have a dream, just like part of the American dream, I want to be a homeowner. So I go through whatever I go through in order to get in a house. And I really extend myself to the fullest limit just to get the house. Well, like anyone else, if you get a brand new house, particularly if you're a first-time homeowner, you want nice furniture in your house. So as soon as you get that mortgage, you go in debt for furniture. And then you go in debt for other things. And then when you pair those all together, your household income is not enough to pay all that debt. And in 4 years, the bank now owns your house. This morning in federal court, the Attorney General's office was present. So after our collaborative meeting, I approached the Attorney General's office to ask them, we need Attorney Generals from around the country to get involved in the foreclosure issue. Because if you all as a group go to DC and say, we have some legal issues we need to talk about with the way these lending practices are happening, it will help not only Ohio, but the rest of the country. And there was some interest in doing that. 2 more items and then I'll take your question. One of the things that has to do with both public safety, neighborhood investment, service excellence, and economic development is our city needs to be cleaner. And one of the ways we get it cleaner is by developing a system for automated sanitation. Most big cities across the country have done this years ago. We are still picking up trash manually in many instances. We have men and women on the back of trucks, just like the old days. We have people with all kinds of trash receptacles, some big, some little, trash bags, whatever. And so when you put it out there and the trash blows, because it will blow, or you put it out there in a bag, an animal gets in your bag, and so they pull the stuff out. Well, if you get enough of that happening 2 or 3 or 4 houses in a row, one, you are inviting an illegal dump site because somebody riding around looking for a place to drop something, they'll drop it. But when the sanitation folks come through, they just pick up the containers and the bags. They're not going to go pick up the trash that's blowing. Well, here's why what seems like a little thing is important. When you have trash blowing all over a neighborhood or a block, and you have overgrown weeds in 3 or 4 of the properties, and you have vacant buildings, you're saying to a criminal, you can do your stuff here. We need a plan. We don't have the money to do it all at once for automating our solid waste, where you have a 90-gallon receptacle and the truck picks it up. It cuts down on workers' comp costs, it cuts down on injuries, it helps us to have a cleaner city, it contributes to a safer city. That's why it's important. So as soon as I get the newly, soon-to-be hired public services director on board, that's one of the first charges I will give him or her, is develop a plan for Cincinnati to have an automated solid waste function. And then we'll struggle to figure out how to pay for it. In a nutshell, those are the 4 areas that we are trying to make an impact in the calendar year 2007. And there's a whole lot of other issues that fall out of the sky or come up or whatever. And we will deal with those. I ask everyone that I speak to publicly, and I say to our folks, we need to speak more positively about Cincinnati, Ohio. Because if we don't talk positively about the city we call home, what do we expect anybody else to do? You travel the country. In my line of work, it has enabled me to travel all over the country in all the years I've been in public service. And so you travel the country and you ask someone, what is your perception of Cincinnati, Ohio? Particularly if they have not been there. They only can relate to the 30-second or the 60-second soundbite in the national news when we're in the national news. So you get stuff back like, didn't you all have a riot? They remember what happened in '01. You get comments about where your football team gets in trouble a lot. If you've never been to Cincinnati, and you know Reds, Bengals, you know about civil unrest, you don't know about all of the Fortune 500 companies that call Cincinnati their headquarters. You don't know about the magnificent park system that we have. You don't know about the arts that we have. You don't know about the effort that's underway to transform the downtown area so that we have a synergy beyond 5 o'clock in the day. You don't know about any of that. And then if you ask people that live here, well, what do you think about your city? If the only thing we say is negative, what do you expect somebody else to say? And it needs to be positive from the cab driver you engage when you get off the plane to people that live here. We have issues. But name me another major city in America that doesn't. There are cities who have homicide rates far greater than ours. There are cities who have a lot of issues, the same issues that we're dealing with. We all have to be concerned about the product that the Cincinnati public school system puts out. We don't control the school system and city government, but we have to engage the school system to collaborate on issues. I have to engage people in Northern Kentucky, even though I have no direct relationship with them. So I go over and talk to the chamber. I go over and talk to the city managers. I talk to the city managers that run Cincinnati. I have a working relationship with the county administrator. You know, someone told me when I first came, it was an email actually, well, we saw that you come from two cities that are merged. And if you came here to push merged government, you could go on back to Kentucky. I didn't come here for that. But I will say this, the public should expect its public institutions to collaborate for their best interest. We need to work well with county government. We need to have a positive rapport with Northern Kentucky. We have nothing to fear from positive things happening on the north side of Kentucky. It helps to create a bigger destination draw for the greater Cincinnati area. So if we do our part and get the banks done and get more things in the central downtown, create jobs, stimulate investment in neighborhoods, and Northern Kentucky does its projects, we will have a greater area with which people can have an interest. So for as long as I'm here, I will be looking for the positive in Cincinnati, not dwelling on the negative. There are plenty of people that do that. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will take your questions.
I misread you, but are you in favor personally of continuing to collaborate after August?
I didn't say that. What I am in favor of is us continuing to do our work to address the few remaining issues within the collaborative. When August comes, it's up to the monitors, actually up to the federal judges to say, you've come far enough or you haven't. For us to really prove our mettle, at some point the collaborative must end, because we need to prove that the fundamental changes we have made within the police department and within the way that we do business, that we will continue to do those without having to go in front of a federal judge every month. We are not there yet. And the question we talked about this morning is how much more progress can we make between now and August? And so we have to see where we are when August comes. But we're going to work very hard to get there. Yes, sir.
A couple things. It seems that citizen oversight is a big concern, particularly in the African American community of the police department, and obviously the collaborative, the issues. It's my understanding that Chief Stryker hasn't had a job review since '99 or 2000, before the riots, and also it's my understanding that the police chief uses taxpayer-funded secretaries to schedule off-duty officers as security for a private corporation. Do you know about this, and do you think the police department needs to be subjected to an audit? And I might add, recently there was an issue with the FOP, Keith Fangman, and sexual harassment allegedly. Can we expect to see any kind of more oversight with you as the new city manager?
Okay, you had more than one question.
Sorry, I tend to do that.
I intend to evaluate the police chief just as I have to evaluate any other directors that are under my jurisdiction. I can't really speak to whether or not he's not had an evaluation going back to '99 because I wasn't here. The approach that I have is I need to work with someone for a year, and then you do an evaluation just like you do on most other jobs. So my year will be August. Mid-August I will have been here 12 months. And when that time comes, is when evaluations will be done. Secondly, your question about secretaries scheduling off-duty work. I'm not sure about that. What I do know is that an officer, unlike maybe, I don't know how they handle it in the private sector, but if I'm a police officer and I want to work off duty, I can't just go out and do that on my own and not tell anybody about it. It needs to be known who I'm working for and what I'm being asked to do and when I'm being asked to do it. And there is an in-house process for coordinating all of those things. Through the budget process, the administration asked to pass the coordinating cost on to the public. There was a reaction from the public. They didn't want to do that. So what we're doing today, the police department now has to absorb that cost. But that's not what we intended to happen. But that is the resolution to that issue at present. Your third question had to do with Keith Feynman. If there was a situation where a private citizen had an issue with the police department, I don't know whether the resolution would have been the same or not. But what you had was two people within a labor organization that have some issues. The person who initially filed the complaint is a police officer and is the head of the labor union. And her dispute was with the person that used to be the head of the labor union. To what extent that dispute exists, I really don't know. Within the labor world, management is limited as to how far we go for inside the union issues. When the complainant decided that she wanted it resolved through mediation, that's how it was dealt with. You know, why should she have done something else, or could she have done something else? Why she chose mediation, I really don't know. What I can tell you is that with regards to the collaborative, with regards to oversight, the collaborative created the Citizens Complaint Authority. And through the budget process, when I cut almost virtually every other area of city government, I did not cut one penny the CCA, because I recognize the environment we're in. The public needs to have an independent place to go to take their issues. The CCA is that place. And so they can go there, they can lodge their complaints, there is a review, there is a board that deals with those complaints, and then they come to the city manager. We have committed that that process will stay in place even after the collaborative ends, whenever it ends. So, in a nutshell, that's my response to all the questions you asked me. In the back.
I have a question about the vortex, which, concentrating on a single neighborhood on crime prevention and reduction, which is very expensive, I believe. And I think it puts a lot of people in jail for very minor things like jaywalking and glittering and that kind of thing. Are you looking or publicizing the cost of the vortex program, and wouldn't some of that cost be well spent on those officers spending time on problem-oriented policing?
Well, the Vortex unit is made up of 50 officers. And so they are getting their salary just as they would if they worked somewhere else in the police department. So I don't see Vortex as necessarily any more costly because they're already getting paid. They don't get extra money because they're in Vortex. Vortex is a response to some situations that we have within the community. Vortex is not, and we don't purport it to be, the sole answer to dealing with criminal activity. We as a community, not we as city government, but we as a community do have some areas of our city where criminal activity is entrenched and it's not going to come out easily. And in those cases, Vortex is one of the tools available to you to intervene. Now, we can say that we like Vortex or we don't. Vortex is very aggressive policing. It does have a zero tolerance methodology. Given our jail overcrowding situation. I can say to you that no, people are not going to jail for jaywalking. They are not going to jail for littering. They might get cited for those things, but they're not being taken into custody unless there's some other reason for them to be taken into custody. What we are doing right now, through the budget process, the City Council appropriated $750,000, and we are engaging Dr. David Kennedy to try to bring his model into Cincinnati. His model, you might say, is an alternative to a heavy reliance on Vortex. His model calls for doing a lot of research to figure out who are the biggest bad guys in your city, and you deal with them. The City Council yesterday passed a motion directing the City Manager to negotiate with the University of Cincinnati and Dr. David Kennedy's people, and we're going to do that. So we're going to try an alternative method. But I will say, Vortex is not the tool for any situation, or every situation. There are some issues with it within some of our neighborhoods. And if we need to do something differently, then we have to figure that out. I also acknowledge that Vortex is offensive to a number of people of color, and I understand why it's offensive. And we have got to address that issue. But in trying to be fair and balanced, I also have to say, if 15 guys are standing on that corner and it's an open air drug market and you want to disrupt it, handing out milk and cookies is not the way. You have got to be very forceful about dealing with that, and unfortunately we have some areas in our city where that's what's going on. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
My name is Roger Davis. I'm the president of the South Homerville Community Council.
Yes, sir.
I want to publicly thank you for attending our meeting Monday.
Yes, sir.
Unannounced. I like that.
Yes, sir.
But my concern, 1,800 vacant buildings and 40 ownership of the city.
Right.
How many of those buildings commercial?
I don't know. I can probably get that number. I can tell you that more than 500 of them are in over the Rhine by itself. So the greatest portion of them are in over the Rhine.
I also wear another hat, co-chair of the Citizens Against Loan Sharks, We in Action Organizing Project.
Yes,
we try to keep people in their homes, so we are concerned about home ownership. You spoke about predatory lending, foreclosures, and going up in Washington, D.C.
Right.
What is it that we need to, in partnership, do with the government to deal with the embarrassment of Ohio being the highest in the nation on foreclosures?
Well, there's 2 or 3 things that's going on. One of them is trying to provide more counseling for people before they make the transaction, and there also needs to be counseling for people after they make the transaction, particularly if they are first-time home buyers. The city does not do that itself. We engage other organizations that are in the business of doing that. The reason that we are at a disadvantage, and any other locality would be at a disadvantage, is that the predominance of these lenders that have these great deals, they are not local. They are national companies. So Cincinnati is at a disadvantage trying to go after some corporation that's based in Delaware, Nevada, or wherever, that's marketing their product across the whole country. What we're saying is, yes, we're leading the country, but we're not the only state dealing with foreclosures. Therefore, we think there needs to be a national response in addition to the state response. That's also why we think that state attorney generals, if they band together will have greater strength in helping to deal with that. Finally, for grassroots organizations that help to either enable people to become homeowners, or in some cases, folks that are in rental property that either are not going to own or don't want to own, encourage them to be more vested in their neighborhood. We have a problem with property owners that own rental property that don't keep it up. So in the 3 neighborhoods that I cited, for example, where we're going to do demolition, we are following the demolition with targeted code enforcement. Now, we will pursue the property owners as far as we can, and we're talking right now about asking absentee landlords, if you don't want that property, give it to us, so that it can be either turned over to a nonprofit, a community development corporation, a Habitat, or someone to put a house on it. If it's a commercial structure, then that's a different animal. But we're going to try to stimulate neighborhood investment. And we're going to try to be in partnership with neighborhoods. But that also means that the neighborhood has to figure out for itself what role it wants to play, as do individuals.
With the Win Action Organizing Project, one of the things that we're trying to do is, and would hope that the city and the county would get together on that, well, not the city, but the state. They have a Senate Bill 185. It's supposed to help protect homeowners. However, there's no tool that we can see when you go to the foreclosure or you get your notice for foreclosures. As an example, I would be a victim, but I would get something to direct me to another agency or a group that could help with the finance. Maybe we deal with partnerships, and that's something I'm hoping is going to continue and build partnerships with financial companies, mortgage companies, servers, things of that sort. But we, as a victim, at that time, I don't know who to go to. Who can help me? Maybe it was a bad loan, but there can be some modifications, things of that sort. So I'm just hoping that the partnerships will develop and be much stronger. I don't want to take it up all day, and I'm getting ready. This is my last concern. You know, we're dealing with I-75 Mill Creek Express.
Right.
That's going to take and close entrance ramps in South Hungerville. That's going to stop us getting on the expressway, getting downtown in 5 minutes. That's going to stop my mother, 91 years old, in case, but I'm not going to make it a real example. But if I need to get to the hospital, and I live right off of Draymond, I live on Road, which is about, I wouldn't say a quarter of a mile. To get to the entrance ramps, they're closing them. So we're really concerned about that, and we're hoping that, you know, someone will help us with that proposal that the ODOT is putting into place.
Well, there will be a public comment period, which is part of the process, and our engineering department is engaging with ODOT. But the stakeholders in the neighborhood, that's the biggest voice. So encouraging more people to come out is the way to go with that.
Okay. We're having a public meeting. Yeah, we're having a public meeting the 22nd.
I'm so glad that you have to talk about the accentuate positive.
Yes, sir.
I'm going before the Cincinnati Association. Told them when I went to Newport, everybody over there was nice. The police was nice, the store over here was nice, and everybody was nice and smiled and talked about how great Newport was. And I'm just asking you, what kind of a plan do we have for developing this accentuate positive part of our city? I think it's something we've got to take initiative in.
One of the things that we need in order to build more positive momentum in the city, we need some wins. Meaning we need to have success on things that we're trying to do. We need success at Fifth and Race. We need success with the banks. We need some success with neighborhood investment. when people see some positive, more positive things happening, I think it will encourage them to focus on that more and not just be overrun by negativity. We could wallow in misery all day long. You know, when I was in Lexington, we could have done that there. We could have done that in Louisville, because there's a lot that you could be negative about. But cities don't rise to their potential wallowing in negative. You have got, every city has something positive about it. I ticked off some of the things that are positive about Cincinnati. What I'm asking and will be encouraging is for that to spread. One of the things that will help, to the point that you're making, we need to have a more consistent way of marketing our city, branding, if you will. If the chamber's saying one thing and the city's saying something else and the county's saying something else and UC is saying something else, it confuses the issue. There is a group of people that have been working on how to better brand this area, how to market us better, how to accentuate the positive. And when that work is done, I think we'll be able to make our case stronger as we talk about Cincinnati across the country. I mean, we need, whether you like sports or not, we need for the Reds to be in the World Series every year. We need to have the Bengals in the Super Bowl. We need to be able to attract world-class events to our city. You know, we need more than just the banks. We need more than just Mountain Square. It takes years to build that. I'm originally from Indianapolis. I remember when Indianapolis downtown was a desert, but go there now. Every day, 7 days a week, something's going on. There's people all around the place. It's a good thing. Yes, ma'am.
Short and sweet.
Okay.
Explain your new trash system. You said that it was something different. Exactly how would it work?
Okay. To do this right, we would need to get in a position where every household that can has the 90-gallon receptacle. Not the tin can, not the whatever else, not bags all over the place. We need to encourage a 90-gallon receptacle and more people to recycle, because recycling diverts the waste stream. When you do 90-gallon receptacles, there are certain kinds of equipment that the sanitation department would purchase that where the truck would lift the can and dump it.
Like a dumpster?
Well, it's like a robotic arm that would lift it up and dump it in a certain kind of vehicle. Well, if you do that, it cuts down on litter blowing all over the place because it's contained in the 90-gallon receptacle, or it's properly bundled in your recycling bin. Now, Cincinnati is hilly, as you all know. So whatever we do, we've got to take into account. There may be some streets where certain equipment can't get to. But that needs to be the exception rather than the rule. If you drive around our city today, people use whatever kind of trash receptacle they want. And some don't use any, it's just bags. When we become automated, we help the neighborhood to be cleaner. We don't need as many people on the truck because the truck's picking it up. You don't have to have 2 people jumping off at every stop. It will save you money because we will have fewer injuries from the people injuring their back, because after a while, all that squatting and all, your body breaks down. It also will reduce illnesses and associated injuries because people put anything and everything in their waste can. And sometimes it's hazardous. And so when our people are handling that can, they can be exposed to hazardous things. This helps eliminate that. It is expensive to do, and you can't do it all in 1 year, but it is something a city the size of Cincinnati, we should have done it long ago. And I'm just saying it's something we need to do now. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to get back. Thank you all for giving me your